about our organization. Let me tell you a little bit about who we are. We are a national healthcare consulting company. The company is actually located in Pensacola. We run our offices out of Gulf Breeze, Florida. Our founder of the company is a former CEO of several hospitals where he turned the culture of those organizations around. And people started coming to him seeking, other CEOs, senior leaders of healthcare organizations started coming to him seeking advice on how they could do the same. And Quint started the organization about 10 years ago. This tells you a little bit about who we are today. Let's talk a little bit about our mission in a minute. We currently have about 150 employees. Most of our, about half of our employees actually work around home offices all around the country because they are former C-suite executives in healthcare. So former CEOs, CNOs, CMOs, CFOs, or nurse leaders or directors who worked in a hospital and really had exceptional results in those organizations. So now they're working with us and they're coaching other hospital systems how to do what we do. The rest of our staff, our administrative staff, works in the Gulf Breeze office. As the Chief Operating Officer, I run the administrative division of our company. We work with about, over the course of the company's 10-year history, we work with about 800 healthcare organizations, changing the culture of those organizations. And that's both in clinical, service, operational outcomes. So those are the things that we focus on. You'll see we've had some good track records of turning some of those organizations around. At the end of the day, our core competency, what we really pride ourselves in, is what we call evidence-based leadership. So we work on alignment and accountability and sustainability, things that will drive those things in our organization. And you can imagine, we've worked with some folks for years. I have been given a little bit over an hour to pick one or two things to talk to you guys about today. And I am going to do my best to give you some things to walk away with, some tactics that you can take home that really can make a difference in your organization. So I appreciate your attention just for the next little bit as we walk through that. I'm going to talk about, when we talk about a culture, I'm going to talk about engagement. And there is a difference between employees who are highly satisfied and employees who are highly engaged. So, do you all understand the difference of that? Being this is the HR track, I assume you did. We want to talk about what engages people to come to work every day and want to go above and beyond what is expected of them every day. And at Studer Group, one of the ways we coach that, and one of the things I want to encourage you to think about, is we use the balanced pillar framework approach. So we don't think it's just one thing that changes a culture, but it's multiple things that change a culture. And so we set them up around these pillars: service, quality, people, finance, growth, and community. And if you think about those things, what you're trying to do in your organizations, if you could have impact across all these pillars, wouldn't that be pretty exceptional? That's what we want to think about today, but I'm going to focus on one or two pillars specifically. There's the rain. I guess it just must be following me, right? What the heck? As we talk about these pillars, there are some core tactics that we coach in organizations. We call them must-have tactics. They're the things that are foundational to changing an organization. And I've highlighted just a few. The first is we really believe that to build a strong culture in an organization, you have to know what your mission, your vision, and your values are. And those things, you have standards of behavior that are built around those things. How many of you here would say you have a good, strong, solid group of standards in your organization? How many? Few hands? If you don't, that's a great place to start. And if you would say, well, I know what the standards tenets of our organization are, but I'm not sure our staff would know. You might want to think about how you, sometimes I think about, what's the comedian that you might be a redneck? So maybe I should pitch that in my line as I talk. You know, if you don't have that, you might not have culture. So the other thing is rounding for outcomes. Just like in a hospital, that we would coach that physicians need to, or nurses need to round on their patients, to ask certain questions to get certain information. How many of you round on your employees? And we call it rounding for outcomes because it's going and asking certain questions so that you can get certain information back and act upon that. We're going to build on that in a minute. I circled AIDIC. It's another tactic we use. It's about when you walk into a room, that you acknowledge the person who's in the room, you introduce yourself, you talk a little bit about the duration of what the experience is going to be, and you explain what the experience is going to be, and you thank that person. How many of you, if you could really coach AIDIC well in your clerk's offices, would find customer service would be so much better? Not sometimes, but always. That someone walked in the door, they were acknowledged, the person working with them would introduce themselves, talk a little bit about, I'm going to be able to help you, but it may take me about 10 minutes to get you what you need. Explain why and what you're going to do, and then thank them. A very simple tactic with incredible outcomes when implemented and hardwired in your organization. When we think about changing culture, it really starts in our organization, and I would submit to you in your organization with what I have up here. So I named this Changing a Culture from Good to Great. How many of you read Jim Collins' book, From Good to Great? Anybody? It's a great book, and one of the things that Collins talks about in the book is the flywheel. And any of you ever seen this theory or applied it in your own organizations, a flywheel? What we believe is that the flywheel really starts at the center with purpose, worthwhile work, and making a difference. It's why you get up every day and go to work. And it's not really about a paycheck, although I know that's important for all of us. But it's making the people that work with you feel that their work is purposeful, that they make a difference in the work they do every day, that it has meaning. If you make that the core of your organization, that's a really good start to building an organization where people feel valued and a part of the work. We believe if you instill passion in people to want to come to work and go above and beyond, you equip them with the right skills, knowledge, tools, and tactics to be successful. And they see the results of that effort, that the flywheel spins. So that's what we want you to take away from this is, how can I get all of those elements so that when people come in for service in our organization, they're getting the absolute best that we have to offer. And it really starts with every member of your team believing in that. But we've got to remind them why they come to work every day. We've got to connect them to the purpose of that work. Let me give you an example. One of the things I do at Studer Group is I run our software division. Okay? So we have some software that aligns to the tactics that we coach. Let me give you an example. Now, I'm going to share with you another one of them here today. We have a piece of software called the Patient Call Manager System. And the purpose of that software is so that every time a patient leaves a hospital, they get a call from the hospital to follow up on their visit. They ask them questions about how they're feeling after the visit, if the medications are working well, just some basic questions. Now, our coaches are working every day in hospitals, talking to the nurses, talking to the people making that call. So folks on the hospital side weren't well equipped for the installation. They didn't really, the IT guys there didn't really want to do it. They were giving our folks, trouble about it, and we just kept plugging along. We ended up hitting our target date to get the software installed. We knew after we installed it, because we heard from the chief nursing officer at that facility, that the same week the software was installed, 2 lives were saved. One of them was a 10-week-old baby. Now, when I heard that story, as a leader in my organization, what do you think I did with it? I shared it with everybody on the IT team. In fact, I took the letter from that chief nursing officer that was pretty emotional about how they knew that they had been difficult to get the software installed. Their team had not been very receptive to helping us. And she shared the story of this baby that was alive today because the software had been installed. Because you see, when they placed the call, they found out that the baby was experiencing some medical issues that had they left unattended, the child would have died. Now, when my staff heard that, it wasn't just that the software was installed. It was that it was installed on time. Right? Now, do you think that day their work had purpose? You think it was worthwhile? Had meaning? Absolutely. But as leaders, it's our responsibility to find the ways, to find the opportunities to make that connection. Because in reality, most days when we go to work, we don't always feel that. It's our responsibilities as leaders to make that connection. This is my daughter, Kelsey. As you can see, Kelsey loves to ride horses. Any of you here have horses? Anybody? Does it cost just a little bit of money to keep the horse up? Yeah. In fact, I'd like to talk about purpose, worthwhile work, and making a difference for me. But a lot of days, this is why I go to work, because I have to feed the horse, right? I have to pay the trainer. I have to buy all the equipment. By the way, as a little side note, when I got a bill from the chiropractor for the horse, sort of wanted to draw the line there. But she loves this horse. In fact, I thought I should put the name Shamrock up there because she'd probably be upset if she knew I was talking about her and I didn't give the horse his due. This is Kelsey and Shamrock, and this is eventing. Anyone here know about eventing? So in eventing, you do dressage, which is the technical part of riding. Then you do stadium jumping, and then you do cross country, where you take this horse and you run as fast as you can over logs and bridges and through rivers, and the jumps are stable. They don't fall like you would in a jumping arena. They're not moving. This is Kelsey jumping. Actually, this is like a jump that was out on the course. This is Kelsey's passion. She loves it. And I understand that she loves it. And as her mother, I'm not wild about it, but, I make sure she wears the right equipment, she does the right thing. A couple of years ago, Kelsey was jumping a course, and the horse lost his footing, and she fell off the horse, and when the horse came down, he stepped on her. Now, I don't know if you can tell it, that's a really big horse. I was off in the distance, and what I heard next was an ambulance, and the course announcer announcing that Kelsey ran down on jump 7, the ambulance is there, and the race is currently suspended while the ambulance makes its way there. I get emotional. When I got in that ambulance to ride with my daughter to the hospital, do you think I really hope they're a Studer Group hospital organization. I hope they know the tactics we're coaching, and I hope the people there are really taking it seriously. Because this is my child. And at the time, we didn't know how significant the injuries were. By the way, Kelsey's fine at the University of Florida, doing just fine, pursuing a degree in medicine, I hope, although this morning's conversation on the 2-hour drive over was that she thought she might need to drop for organic chemistry class. That's another story. I'm a little rattled because of it, but we'll talk about that later. Kelsey's fine, and her treatment at the hospital was very good. I tell you that story because I had the opportunity to be in healthcare. I'm not in a hospital every day. I'm not touching patients every day. But my work absolutely has meaning. Because if the work we do to support the coaches who are out in hospitals every day can be better and more impactful, I have the ability to impact people's lives. You guys absolutely every day are impacting lives. People are coming into your organizations every day seeking answers, information, or help. And you may think, well, how significant is it? To the person that comes in there that day, it's pretty darn significant. Somehow we've got to make the people who are doing the work, serving those people, feel that the work they do every day matters. Does that make sense? So what we have to think about is what kind of culture are we building in our organizations to make people feel connected to that purpose? So how would you define culture? Anybody want to offer a suggestion of how you define culture in your organization? Oh, come on, I gave you a tip whenever we started. Huh? Mission, vision, and values. So I really believe it's about the values in an organization. It's the sort of the observed behaviors in your organization, right? The reality is culture, real culture, is what people do when nobody's watching, right? It's the way people would behave, not because somebody's watching them do it, but because they have a responsibility to do it. So our mission at Studer Group is to make healthcare better, for employees to work, for physicians to practice medicine, and for patients to receive care. And we instill that mission in every employee, every day. When we send out an email that's impactful to the organization, we connect it to why. And the why is the mission. If we're looking at growing our business, it's not because we want to make more money, although making more money is nice. It's because when we serve more healthcare organizations, we're broadening our mission. We're making a difference in healthcare. How are you doing that in your organization? When no one's watching, what are your employees doing? The reality is a lot of people want you to give them a silver bullet, right? I can't give you a silver bullet. But the leaders of an organization can change the organization first by role modeling the behaviors that you want of your staff and setting those expectations of your staff. So when I talk about Studer Group, do I sound proud about where I work? You darn right I am. I'm really proud about where I work. Because the reality is we have to, as an organization, be practicing what we teach organizations. In fact, we felt so strongly about that at Studer Group that we went on a Baldrige journey ourselves. The organization was doing really well, but how could we bring in a fresh set of eyes, someone to really hold us accountable and look at the things that we were doing? Are any of you in here familiar with the Baldrige process? It's the nation's highest national quality award. They send in a group of examiners and they ask for years of evidence to show that what you say you do, you actually do. We went on that journey and we were awarded the Baldrige Award in 2010. We survey our employees to ask them questions that measure satisfaction and engagement, and as an organization, where your organizations would fall. We apply every year for Great Places to Work. Why do we do that? We want to compare ourselves with the best companies in the country. How do we compare? Last year we were number 5. Now, I'm not saying all that to you to make you think, oh, we're such a great organization. I'm saying it took years and years of building in the tactics that we coach and that I want to share with you to make that happen. So Quint wrote a book called Hardwiring Excellence. Anybody ever heard of this book? Did you read it? You've read it? So it's the #1 best-selling book in healthcare. It talks about hospitals, but it's very transferable to your organizations. Would anybody here like this book? First stand up. So we have these, by the way, if any of you want them. It talks about these tactics that we coach, okay? So here's what I can tell you. The reality is, vision without execution is nothing more than hallucination, right? You can say you've got vision, you can talk about your vision. If you're not executing it in your organization, you are doing nothing but sounding good, talking good. So what we want you to do is execute. And I want to talk to you a little bit about how we're going to do that. In order to implement change in your organization, you've got to do these 8 things, and they're listed here. First is you've got to establish a sense of urgency. You've got to create a team to do that with you. You've got to have your vision and your strategy in place. Communicate the change, empower people to act, celebrate the short-term wins, get your gains and continue the effort, and then anchor those things into your organization. And by the way, he says it's important that you follow those things sequentially. What's the first thing you have to do? Establish urgency. How many of you here today honestly would say that your organizations are great? Couldn't be any better? I'm glad no hands went up, because I wouldn't even say that about our organization. We got a lot of ways we can be better. How many of you here would say that your organizations are really desperate to change? Good. How many of you here would say you personally want to see your organizations change? Good. So what we want to encourage you to do is establish a sense of urgency in your organization. That typically happens when someone in the organization, could be one person, but typically 3 to 5, 3 to 4, say, we cannot keep doing things the way that we are doing them and expect things to get better. We've got to change, right? So, just a tip, if those of you who raised your hands, if you really want to see good culture in your organizations and you want to be a part of that change, find others in your organization who want that too. And get them together and figure out how you're going to do that. And by the way, that won't occur from you getting together and saying, isn't everything great? I mean, yeah, probably we could have provided better customer service over the last year, but we're really not that bad. You have to substitute every day or one fear for another. Let me give you an example. I recently did a strategy session with our Pensacola Opera. They wanted to do some pretty deep dive into their strategy. And I asked them how things were going in their organization. They said, never been better. And so I talked about this urgency and creating urgency because they wanted to do a capital campaign and some other things. But the problem was, they told me, is we've never been in a better financial situation than we are today. The reality is, for the first time, they actually had some profit, and they weren't absolutely dying month to month, which many of you, if you work with nonprofits, know that's typically the case, right? So I said, well, that's good. And I'm sitting there thinking, wow, that's pretty impressive. I mean, I remember 3 or 4 years ago when they were struggling. So I said to them, what happens if we have another Hurricane Ivan? And the next 3 productions that you're planning on and the big fundraiser that you have planned in 2 months can't happen. They said, well, we'd be in trouble. And I said, you mean 6 months of not business as usual and your organization will be in trouble? They said, yeah. I said, there's your fear, right? Because the reality is that's not enough to sustain an organization. It feels good today because of what you've been through in the past, but it's not enough to create better in the future. So figure out how to really get your team engaged by not talking happy talk, but talking the reality of what the organization is currently experiencing and how you need to change that. We do a survey of the healthcare organizations we work with, typically before we start to work with them, and we ask this question. When leaders are asked to rank what the external market will be like over the next 5 years, we find that senior leaders will say they're going to be difficult or very difficult. And the leaders just under them will say they're going to be normal to difficult. You find that kind of interesting? What do you think is the cause of that? The reality is about 2/3 of the organizations we survey say, you know, if we didn't change anything, if we just keep doing things the way we're doing them, we'll be about the same a year from now, 2 years from now, as we are today. How many of you believe that in your own organizations? If you just keep doing things the way you're doing them now, maybe you think you're doing a pretty good job, things will be about the same a year from now, 2 years from now, as they are today.
I don't think that goes along with the long tail theory where things will just gradually decline if you do nothing.
That's exactly right. In reality, you better be getting better faster than the other guy's getting better, or you are getting worse. Let me say that again. You've got to be getting better faster than the other guy's getting better, or you're getting worse. You can absolutely not stand still and expect to be here in the same place tomorrow that you are in today. Because leadership really is like, you know, standing on an escalator. And you know how you would constantly be trying to fight it. You can't stand still on a down escalator and expect to be moving forward. You've got to constantly be propelling yourself forward. And the reality, and by the way, we love this quote, people will tell you that they want to be settled. I just want life to settle down a little bit. But only to the extent that people are unsettled is there really ever any hope for them, right? We've always got to want to keep striving to be better. You know, maybe let me just take it to a personal level. Maybe it's your personal faith. Maybe you really strongly have faith. But do any of you believe that you just can settle for that and it be enough? You've constantly got to be learning and growing and moving. You can't just say, well, things are pretty good today. I think I'll just stay where I am. You've got to constantly be pushing yourself to be better, learning more, growing. And the same applies to the organizations that we work with. So I shared with you Cotter's work. Let me share with you the year's worth of evidence we have from our own organization on why most organizations try to implement change and that fails. The first I've already hit on. Typically because people don't connect to the why. They don't connect to purpose, what the purpose in that work is, or why they are doing it. I would challenge you, anytime you want your staff to do something, not to simply tell them what you want them to do, but why you want them to do it. It's not just that the expectation is that you provide excellent customer service to every single person that walks in here, but why that is your expectation. What you hope to achieve from that. Why that matters in your organization. The second is that there's not a balanced approach. And I shared that with you earlier. I don't think that people can be singularly focused. It's important that they understand the overall implication. It's not just to that one thing that they're doing. So the software example I gave you earlier, it's not just about the installation of the software for our IT folks, It's making sure that our coaches are successful when they go on site, that they have the tools they need to be successful. It's that the people that are getting the calls have software that they can count on to work, that the callers can count on the software to work. It's a whole host of things, right? It's a balanced approach. The other is the absence of an objective evaluation system. How many of you here really believe that every employee in your organization knows what's expected of them and they are measured on that each and every day? The other thing we find is that leaders typically don't have the training to be successful. How many of you in your organizations have known this to ever happen? The highest performer in your organization, maybe the frontline clerk, service representative who's just really great at what they do, is so good that they get promoted to a leadership role, right? How much training have you given them to be a really good leader of all the other staff? None. But we say, well, they're really good at what they do. And a lot of times high performers will take it upon themselves to get the training and the skill they need to be successful. But as leaders, we have a responsibility to never put them in that position in the first place. The other thing we find is that we try to implement too many new behaviors at once. So we find this in our organization a lot. We have a lot of high performers. We hear about 5 or 6 things that are happening, and we say, oh, when I go home tonight, think about your New Year's resolutions. Let's put it in a context like that. How many of you have ever said at New Year's, I'm going to stop eating bad food so that I can lose weight. I'm going to start exercising 7 days a week. I'm going to go to church every Sunday. I'm going to call my mother at least once a week, and I'm going to call my grandmother twice. And really believe you're going to do all those things, right? Your best chance of success is to pick one of those things. Really be committed to one of those things until you get it locked down, and then add in some other things. To try to do them all at once is almost guaranteed failure. That's what years of evidence in our organization has shown us. The other thing we find is that there's no process in place to re-recruit your high performers and to get rid of your low performers. I'm going to spend more time on that in a minute. We don't have any processes in place to standardize best practices or the things that really work well in an organization. And we don't have our leaders doing always behavior. Maybe sometimes, maybe occasionally, but not always. Those are the things that typically will lead an organization not to be able to implement something and have it stick in their organization. So thinking about your organizations today, what do you think is probably one of the key things that you're lacking? What we typically find is number 3, the absence of an objective accountability system, and re-recruiting and getting rid of your poor performers is most significant to how you can see change happen fastest. Yes. So I want to talk about that a little bit. I told you earlier that our core competency is evidence-based leadership. It's based on this, that what you really need in your organization is a way to have aligned goals that drive the behaviors, coupled with the right processes to really make a culture of excellence. An organization that gets always performance and hits their target markets. So I want to talk about the goals a little bit, the objective evaluation system. So when you think about an evaluation system or setting goals in your organization, here's what you want your goals to be. You want them to be objective. You want them to be measurable. We would recommend some sort of weight so you can focus on the really important things and that they have some kind of a metric range. What we find a lot of times in an organization is that goals will be something like displays good teamwork, shows integrity within their working relationship with customers, things like that. Anybody here think those are good, objective measures? Now, we would call those the values I spoke of earlier. which are the expectations you have to work here. That's not how I'm measuring your performance or your success. Those are expectations to be employed at this organization. In fact, by the way, just for you all to think about, we, at our organization, we will not even interview someone until they have read our standards of behavior, our values, and our mission statement, predominantly the values and the standards, and they can commit that they would live by those. Because why do you want to recruit someone in who can't adhere to the values that are so important to your organization? So we don't waste the HR leader's time, we don't waste a direct support supervisor's time. If that person can't commit to those values up front, and it sets the stage early for these are the expectations that we have in our organization. So here is an evaluation system of an organization that we work with. Can those of you in the back see it? This is no joke. This is really what they use. And it's okay. I like that it's visual. So the happy faces would tell you what? Oh, we're doing pretty good in that goal. Smiley faces, not so good. Can you see it? Are there more happy faces or sad faces? Right? So would you say this organization hit all their organizational goals that year? No, I wouldn't either. I'd say it looks pretty bleak. When we took the individual goals of the leaders and we plotted them out, here's what we found. 73.8% of the leaders of that organization were substantially exceeding their goals. Now, doesn't it make you say, how can the organization be failing, but leaders be substantially exceeding their goals? They're not aligned. Exactly. When we talk about alignment, these goals are not aligned. So we went in and worked with this organization, encouraged objective, measurable, metric-driven goals. And it may require that you find ways to get that measure. So you may actually have to do a customer service survey to find out not what you think that employee's interaction is, but how the customer feels. You'd have to measure that. So how would you say they did year 2? Pretty good, right? More happies than negatives, and the yellows means they're trending in the right direction. When we charted them the next year, here's what we found. Which is about what we would expect, because they're doing pretty good. They weren't hitting all of their goals. And the way those goals are set encourages leaders to want to do more, to push harder, to strive for better from their organization. In fact, we would encourage you to think about a 3 being hitting your goal, a 4 being exceeding, and a 5 being substantially exceeding goals. Because then you're always pushing those measures. By the way, when we implemented this in a hospital, see if I can find a corner here. So this is when we implemented the tool. Look what happened. Same thing with this organization. This is when we implemented, and here's what happened after we did. So a good objective evaluation system in an organization can make a significant difference. Because instead of people wondering what they should be doing, guessing what's expected of them, they know. And they are evaluated on that, and they're rewarded by the success of those measures. So for those of you in HR, would really encourage you to think about implementing good measures and evaluations in your organizations. On average, in healthcare organizations, 8% of employees aren't meeting their performance expectations, and 50% have no documentation that tells them they aren't performing. How in the world can we expect people to be better if they just don't even know what's expected? Isn't it our responsibility? So think about that vision statement of Studer Group, and I bet some of you have the same kind of vision statement that talks about maximizing human potential. Geez, this is the HR track. We're people that are supposed to care about people. Don't we have a responsibility to make sure that people know what's expected of them? That they don't have to guess about that? That we're documenting that performance? and helping them to do better. In order to do that, we have to develop people to be better. We have to give them the skills and tools they need to be better. So I want to talk a little bit about that second circle there, that people circle and aligned behavior. So this is an example of the way we think about our recruitment, our selecting and retaining talent system. I don't know if you guys can see this very well from the back. I talked a little bit about the first boat, sort of the selecting talent, the fact that it starts with an understanding of what the standards are, mission, vision, and values. Peer interviews. How many of you here use peer interviews to select people into your organization? Are you familiar with what a peer interview is? Do you know why you really want to do a peer interview? Because the beauty of a peer interview is that the team is helping to select the members of their team. And what a difference would it make if it wasn't somebody telling you that this is who you have to work with, but instead someone feeling that they're invested in that person's success because they help select them. By the way, the number one thing we hear from leaders when we try to implement peer interviewing is, what happens if the peer team selects someone that I don't want to hire? That happens a lot. Does anybody know the answer to that question? You never send someone to a peer interview that you wouldn't hire. The beauty is the leader gets the first shot. So interview, come up with 2, 3 candidates you really like for that job, send them to the peer interview panel, give them good behavioral-based questions. Any of you here use behavioral-based questions? Behavioral-based questions allow you to ask questions not about what you would do, but what you've actually done. Because in reality, past performance is the best predictor of future performance. So in your organizations, think about your interview processes and how you're asking questions. Boy, I love questions that say, what would you do if? Because I know what I would do, but did I actually do it? So instead, ask questions. Give me an example of a time when you. By the way, there's some interesting stories around that. When we get through this, I'll even maybe toss one or two up. Monthly meeting model. The other thing we encourage is that every month you sit down with direct reports and you have a meeting with them. And you talk about how they're trending to their goals. I'm going to give you an example of that in a minute. You review the monthly. We would encourage you to have a standard of the month, the benefit of the month. That you review that with the employees just to find time to have those conversations. Anybody know why? You want them committed to those things. By the way, on benefits, most of you, I mean, you're all state employees, right? You may not be able to compensate the way that you want, but your benefits are pretty good, right? Do you know most organizations with poor benefits that communicate well, employees would tell you they're happier with their benefits than organizations who have incredible benefits but don't communicate well. How many of you here really reinforce to people every day how lucky they are to have the benefits they have in their jobs? Make them feel good about that. Find a way to always connect to the fact that that's great. For you as leaders, that's a re-recruitment tool. And you always want to be re-recruiting those people, making them feel that this job is good for them, that they get something from it. So to that point, reward and recognize. How many of you here are really good about letting the people know who are doing a great job that they're doing a great job? That you appreciate the work they do, that you value them, and that you don't know how this organization would survive without them. If you are not doing that, you're missing a great opportunity. And it's not just about re-recruiting those employees, it's about making them have purpose, worthwhile work, and making them do it. Because they are. I'm going to talk about that in just a minute as well. So this is a sample of an annual evaluation. If you can see, on the side we have a goal that would be weighted under service. So Improve satisfaction as measured by the measurement spreadsheet in all lines of service. So figuring out a way to make that measurable. You have a goal that's weighted at 10% or 5%, 30%, 50%, whatever that is. And every month with that employee, you're reviewing that progress to the goal. And we do that then by setting 90-day action plans. So if they're not hitting the goal or they are hitting the goal, you say for the next 90 days, this is really what I want you to focus on. And you figure out some very specific things that are expected of that employee. And you track those. And when you meet monthly, you see how you're tracking to those things. And you measure them through a monthly report card, where you enter those goals every month. And what happens at the end of the year? When you have that conversation, nobody's surprised. Or when you have to let that employee go, nobody's surprised. I don't know about you guys, and I've had to do reductions in force at our organization. I've had to let people go because of performance. In fact, I'll tell you, I had to do that recently with somebody through a restructuring of our organization, somebody that I attempted multiple times to help define the work. And I didn't sleep for a good couple of weeks before I knew that conversation was coming. I don't care how many times I do it, how many times I've done it. I never like it. I don't want to do it. The one thing that I want to know for sure is, when I sit down to have that conversation, that employee is not surprised. Because to me, if I'm having that conversation with that employee and they're looking at me like they had no idea that this was coming, I haven't done my job. So I want to ask you guys to hold up the mirror on that a little bit. How many of you could say the same thing? If you can't say that, then think about a system like this that would allow you to do that. I kid you not, I didn't sleep many nights before that conversation. I went in, I felt like he had to know it. I mean, I don't think I danced around the bush. I think I've been clear about the expectations. The best feeling I had is when I said it, he reached in his pocket and took out the key and set it on the desk. He knew when he walked into my office what he was coming. And he and I still talk a couple of times a week. He's looking for another job and I want to help him. I care about him. But at that moment, that was helpful to me. So we need to think about what we can do to be better leaders for the people that count on us. And we can do that by making sure there aren't surprises at year end or when there are performance issues. So I mentioned this earlier, this high, middle, low concept. I want to share this chart with you. Most organizations, if you think about it, you got typically three types of employees, right? High performers, those people that go above and beyond to exceed expectations, always willing to do just a little bit more. You don't have to ask them to do it, they just do it. And they're always trying to help other people be better. Then we have our middle performers. Those are folks who come into work every day, do what they need to do, solid, we can count on. And then we have the low performers. Any of you here have any low performers in your organization? I bet if I went home and asked your husband or wife or significant other who the low performers were in your organization, they could tell me. They could tell me because you're taking them home at night. They're all you ever talk about. What's the best thing that you can do for the high performers in your organization? Get rid of your low performers. Can you imagine how frustrating it would be to come to work every day, to be busting it, giving it everything you've got, covering slack for somebody all the time, and to see somebody else who does nothing and gets away with it day after day after day? How long should we really expect that the high performers are going to kind of want to keep going above and beyond? Remember that thing I talked about, human responsibility? How as leaders do we not have a responsibility to help our high performers by getting rid of our low performers. And if you want to talk about how it can start to erode your organization, the problem becomes your middle performers. Because the middle performers are looking for someone to either lift them over the wall or they're going down. So if you want to think about how to move your middle performers up and over the wall so that they become high performers, you want them to work with who? Your high performers. You want the high performer to be showing the middle performer what a high performer looks like. But don't you think for a minute that the middle performer isn't occasionally getting pulled down by your low performer. What you want in your middle and high performers is that the gap between those folks and your low performers becomes so intolerable that the low performer says, I gotta go find somewhere else. This is just uncomfortable. I don't feel like I fit in here. Nobody wants me here. And you as a leader need to get rid of it. Yeah.
What if your low performer is in a high position, is in a leadership position, and we're in our leader running a process, and our employees are being analyzed. You have what you
Right. Well, if your low performer is the elected official in the clerk's office, my point is, I do think at some point it becomes a senior leader responsibility, working with your HR team to fix that issue. And you have to occasionally get rid of your leaders in order to change. In fact, leaders can erode the culture of your organization fast. Right. So we have to be talking about that and making sure that we're getting rid of those low-performing leaders. That's a great question. Really good question. Okay, so let me just kind of end it with this because I want to have time to cover the customer service piece that I was asked to talk about a little bit too. The reality is, isn't this true? Everybody thinks about changing the world. Big plans for big things that they can do. But nobody really thinks about changing themselves like we should. The reality is, if you want to change your organization, remember at the very beginning when I talked about it starts with somebody kicking into action? Start with what you can do. What can I do in my organization? And you all are here because you're high performers or leaders in your organization, I'm guessing. So I think your ability to change your organizations is pretty significant. But you have to want to do that. You have to say, I want to be better. I want to be a better leader. Let me tell you, there's hardly a day I don't wake up that I don't say I want to be a better mother. I want to be a better boss. I want to be a better friend. I want to be a better daughter. I want to be a better granddaughter. I want to be a better sister. I want to be a better aunt. I really do want to be all those things. You think there's anybody that can make that happen more than I can? It starts with me. I've got to decide what I'm going to do today to be all those things. You have to ask that of yourself too. What am I going to do? How am I going to change it? Let's talk about the execution piece. Let's talk about the standardization and the accelerators. And one of the things I heard was we're really experiencing customer service challenges in our organization. Is that true? You guys really want me to focus on this? So I just pulled together in our company, so we're a company that coaches performance excellence. So we have to be role modeling it in our organization. It's something we always work on and we train our staff on pretty regularly. And here's some things we talk about. The first is really just understanding that service excellence is about meeting, managing, and I like to think of exceeding expectations. In order to know how to do those things, you have to really have a clear understanding when that person walks in the door or comes to you, what is it they're expecting from you. So sometimes it's just understanding in order to perform well or to do well, to manage and meet and exceed what is expected of you to do that. So back to kind of the goal piece, but applying it here to service excellence. So back to individual ownership. If we can make the folks that work with us that are providing the frontline customer service think like this, that if every day you haven't performed at your best, there's one person that you've hurt more than anybody else, and that's you. Because it's your reputation. You may think of it as the clerk's office, but it's really what people think of you. You are the clerk's office. You're the person they think of. It's what people think of you, not only of our organization. So that's personal accountability and having folks really think about that individual ownership. By the way, isn't it great if we can make people think like owners instead of renters? How many of you ever rent a house? Take all your disposable income and fix the kitchen, remodel the cabinets. But if you bought that house, what would you do? Fix the kitchen, fix the bathroom, buy new cabinets, all those things that are important to making it better, right? How can you, and I don't know the answer to this question, but I would challenge you to think about it. How can you make folks think about the clerk's office as something they own, not that they rent? Let me tell you how we do it at Student Group. Maybe you guys could come up with something creative here, by the way. At Student Group, we made a decision that we would put a portion of the profits into what we call success share. And as long as the company hits its financial goals, a percentage of the money would roll back to employees based on years of service to the organization. Now, every time I take a flight to go speak around the country, and I've been gone sometimes for 10 days, I have a decision. Do I want to take my car and park it at the airport for 10 days, or have someone drop me off at the airport? How many times would people think, well, I'm not paying for it, the company's paying for it? Not anymore. I'm paying for it. When I go to order supplies, did I really try to find the cheapest, best price? More than that, we have our coaches. They travel all around the country. Anybody here believe it's cheaper to buy a ticket, an airline ticket, 14 days in advance? In fact, if you were going to take a trip, your family vacation, would you try to find a ticket that you could purchase at least 14 days in advance? You're paying for it. Every time you would, you know you would. But how many times when you say, well, I'm not really paying for it, the company's paying for it? Somehow we have to make our employees think of this as their company. They've got to be owners in your offices, not renters. You've got to change the way they think about that. So it takes a lot of focus, it takes a lot of commitment and discipline, and it takes consistency. The other thing we find is a lot of times people will implement a change, but it doesn't always stick. You've got to find a way to make it just the way we do things around here, when nobody's looking, right? So the reality is a lot of people can fake it for a while, right? You've heard that saying, fake it till you make it kind of thing. But if it really becomes just the expectation that that's the way we do things around here, people won't fake it for long because it just won't be fun. It really will be who they are and what they do. So we would encourage you to really train your staff well on the importance of communication. And here are some things to think about. When you talk about communication, it's got to be very clear and establishing a rapport with the person who is asking something of you. So, be confident, right? Don't act like you don't know or you don't care. Understand that people are different. Not everybody comes in and is easy to talk to. People have different ways that they communicate, right? Everybody's different. Be enthusiastic, make eye contact. Frankly, just be interested in them. Come on. How many times have you gone in to ask for something and you can tell this person really just doesn't want help? Right? I mean, we were at a restaurant this weekend and the waiter came over. Hi, my name's Kevin. Write your name on this. What do you want? I could tell what I want is for you to want to help me at this moment. That's what I want, Kevin. You know? So it does make a difference if you feel interested in the people that you're working for. And then how you say what you say plays an important role in the communication. How many of you know that's true, right? So you get a recounting of the customer service exchange. The words are all right, but you know the delivery was not what you needed. So it's really training people. It's not only what you say, but how you say it. That is significant in customer service. Every day we make a choice. We make a choice to either deliver excellent performance or to do just enough to get by. And we have the choice to exceed expectations or rush through the task. And I don't have to spend a lot of time talking to you about this because you know this. You've experienced it, you've lived it, you know which of your employees do this well and which do not. The only thing I would say to you as leaders in this room is make sure that those employees know the difference. Don't have any question that you've not spent the time training them on it's not only what they say, but how they say it. Does that make sense? Let's take it a little bit further. This is a coach of ours. She was a emergency room nurse, and she has this book called Eat That Cookie, and it's based on this concept. Let's go back to the low performers. If any of you are just on the fence about how you know if someone's a low performer or not, offer to have a pizza party. You're going to bring in pizza to thank the employees for the work they've done. Your low performers will complain about the pizza. It was too cold, you only got pepperoni, I wanted cheese, why didn't you get everything? Liz's book is on, you know it's true. Liz's book, Eat That Cookie, was based on experience she had where she was going to try to really encourage good customer service in their organization. And so she brought in smiley face cookies, and she was going to give the employees these cookies. And this one nurse said, "Why cookies? I don't really like cookies." And she said, "Shut up and eat the cookies." Right? So this is Liz's book. Anybody think you could use this? So this is a great book. By the way, we have another book. I should have brought that. I don't think I did. Called When You're Sorry, Say So. Something like that. But focusing on service doesn't make the job more difficult. The thing that it makes it is more rewarding. Going back to why we do what we do. If you can convince people that the reason they provide great customer service is not because their job's they're going to lose their job if they don't, but because their job can be so much more rewarding if they do. That they can leave at night feeling good that they made a difference for somebody that day. I helped somebody. It's not because I'm afraid I'm going to lose my job at the end of the day. It makes people feel proud about their work, and it makes a much more positive work environment, which is the culture that we want. So, pizza or cookies, and you can figure out any of you who are on that fence. So, service excellence defined, really, we have to determine, what does it mean to you? You can think about that. What does it mean to your customers? And by the way, sometimes it's helpful to define customers. So sometimes you have internal customers, sometimes you have external customers. Make sure you differentiate that so people really know what's expected. And the level of service you provide is really, at the end of the day, sort of that unspoken value you talk about in your organization. So when you talk about integrity, when you talk about teamwork, when you talk about respect, one of the most common values that organizations will say they have is respect. Is every interaction you have with someone respectful? Does it portray the values that you want in your organization, or does it not? Make sure that as you all think about, okay, we've really got to get good customer service in our organization. I spent the first few slides talking about what employees can do. This is what you can do. Make sure that you have good skills and training in place so that they're knowledgeable about what's expected of them, and then that they are exhibiting the behavior and that it's consistent execution. So, for example, I talked to you earlier about AIDED. So we want a nurse, every time a nurse walks into a room, and I want you to remember, how many of you over here have been in a hospital? How many of you, keep your hands up, how many of you ever had a family member in the hospital? A friend? How many of you have ever had to go to a doctor's office to meet with a physician about something that was wrong? Okay, the reality is we've all had similar experiences like that. Isn't it great when that nurse or that doctor walks up to you and says, hey, I'm Dr. Johnson. First thing to do is just acknowledge you. Mary, I'm glad you're here today. I'm Dr. Johnson. I've been practicing medicine for the last 15 years, 20 years. For those of you in the clerk's office, hi, my name is Sarah. I've been working in the clerk's office for the last 13 years. What do you think immediately that person that walks up to get help thinks? Just from that first introduction. Darn right, but dang, Mary ought to know what she's doing. She's been here 12 years. So automatically you've established credibility with the person that's seeking the help. I want to, talk to them about what they need. I want to help you with that. It's going to take me about 10 minutes, 15 minutes to run that. Or if they're sitting waiting in a line, if you just say to them, I know that you've been waiting, I'm going to be able to be with you in about. How many of you have ever been in a restaurant and somebody says to you, we'll seat you in about 5 minutes, and 35 minutes later you're still waiting? Right? Do you leave there feeling, oh, that was a great experience? No, you want to be honest. You want to know, and it's helpful when you know. So the duration is important. Explanation about what you're going to do, and then the simple thank you. Makes a big difference. So to improve our skills, some key things that we would encourage you to do, and to coach those that you work with, providing good customer service to do. The first is to be prepared and not preoccupied. And how many times have you worked with folks or seen folks working with other people and you don't feel that they were prepared or preoccupied, or they were preoccupied? You know it, and it's aggravating when it happens, right? I just want to get through this so I can go about doing whatever else I was doing. The other thing is to be open-minded and not defensive, particularly when someone walks in and they didn't have such a good experience before. The natural tendency is to want to say, well, I didn't do that, or it wasn't me, or, just be open-minded to what the person's trying to share, and to listen, to not feel that you need to constantly stop them to tell them why what they're saying isn't valid or what you disagree with. Sometimes it's the simple act of being heard that someone appreciates. So that's important in good service. Hearing, interpreting, understanding, and relating, asking good questions, giving good body language, and I know what I love is just be real with me. If you can't do it, don't tell me you're going to try to do it. If you can't do it, tell me when you can do it. And don't make it fake, just make it real. I think people really value that. If you have experiences that don't go so well, so how you turn those sort of unmet expectations in a positive experience is helping people connect to the, come on. I talked about this at the beginning. Why do we do what we do? Connect to purpose. Connect to purpose, connect to the why, right? When you don't meet a service expectation, helping the person did that understand what that means to the organization, why it makes a difference. And then, how many of you here would say we really want exceptional customer service in our organization, but we don't empower people to provide good customer service? You might think about what you could do in your organizations so that people that are in the front lines having to make a decision right then and there know how far they can go to resolve whatever our customer complaint is. In our organization, we gave the ability for folks to give up to a certain dollar amount in service recovery if ever we really just mess something up. They don't have to come to me and get permission. They don't have to go to their supervisor. Right then and there on the phone, if they're talking to somebody and they had a problem, they can offer them something to say, I'm sorry that that happened. Here's what I'd like to do for you. So that's another tactic you might think about in your organization. Huh?
Yeah.
That won't happen.
We know about that kind of fun, the money.
But it may not only be the funding. Let me give you an example. How many of the folks that you work with deal with folks that come in and are unhappy, and you know that person's address? I'd say most times you do, right? How many times do you sit down and write a personal note to them and say, I understood you were in today. I'm sorry about what happened. It's always our goal to provide you with service that you expect when you come in here. Next time when you come in, ask for me personally so that I can help you. I realize it's different, but would somebody get that and say, hey, that's pretty good? So you may have to think outside the box a little bit about how you can change the way that people are interacting with other people, but that they would take accountability for that. Okay? Just something to think about. By the way, service recovery process, so that kind of where we were going with that conversation. In training, we would say in service recovery, the very first thing that you should do is to admit the mistake and apologize. And I will tell you, I've even had this happen to me when I know that I did something differently than the person was describing on the other end of the phone. And your first tendency is to try to start explaining, that wasn't what I intended, or here's, instead of first just saying, I am so sorry that happened. So sorry that happened. Now, what's the next thing when you say you're sorry that typically when you know you did something right and you apologize, okay, so we're going to train people to apologize. I'm so sorry that happened. What's the next thing that often will follow? But. As soon as you say but, you're done. So you can literally train people to say, I'm so sorry that happened in my head, but not to say that to them. Because it does change the dynamic. As soon as you say that, they think you didn't really mean what you just said. Say it, I'm sorry, because you are. I regret that occurred. I regret that happened. Wasn't our intention that happened. Let's talk about what we can do now to get it right. Because most people, that they're really upset, they're not really interested in your excuses or any of that. They just want to know what you're going to do to fix it. So apologize, correct the service, and then take action. I won't say compensate, because you guys are already talking, we don't have anything here. But find a way to compensate, whether that be an emotional bank account, if you don't have the financial bank account, to really build a rapport and establish some sort of relationship with that person. Okay. By the way, I won't do this, but I think you all could think about this as a personal assignment, just to kind of hold up the mirror and think about maybe your most recent experience, or getting your staff to do that, and think about how they could provide customer service better. Think about, again, I'll share these slides. Another thing you might think about is, coming up with an individualized plan for professional growth, particularly around customer service if that's something significant in your organization. And making people realize when it comes to service, it's really about a choice. It's our choices that show who we truly are, far more than our abilities. By the way, I'm kind of thinking about my daughter having to drop that organic chemistry class when I make that comment, right? Because she's got the ability to do the class, to pass the class. The choice she made to go to the concert or the sorority party, or whatever else she did, had greater impact than her abilities. So in our own organizations, often it really is about the choices we make, not about our abilities. And getting people to understand that everyone's capable, if they own it. So when you think about service excellence, service recovery, we would just coach to own it. Get it right, fix it, and move on. I've talked about a lot of different things here with you today. And Lisa said if I let you out early, y'all like you better. A lot of different things here. I've talked about alignment, I've talked about accountability, I've given you some specific tactics. I mentioned things like, having people sign your standards of behavior and your value statement before you even interview them, peer interviewing, which wasn't really the key intent of my talk to you today. What I really wanted you to walk away with today, if nothing else, was connecting to why you do what you do. Really finding a way that people go back to feeling that the work they do every day really does have purpose, is worthwhile, makes a difference. And so whether it's the overall job or the very specific thing they're doing that day, in that minute, or that hour, why they're doing it, it's part of who we are and what we do and what we expect from this office and from this team. You can't change everything. I mean, somebody asked about what do you do about the leader that's, not the strongest leader in your organization. You can't change everything. I get that. There are certain things in my organization I can change. But the things that you can change within your sphere of influence, the people that you can help move, start there. Start with those folks. Remember that first slide we talked about really having urgency and just saying, I don't want another day to go by where we're doing things like we've been doing it in the past. It can be better, it can be different, and I'm going to find some people that are going to help you to do that. Things will really change for you when you do that. I could not leave this presentation without telling you that if you are not thanking the people who are helping to do the things that are making a difference in your organization, you're missing a great opportunity for you individually to find purpose, worthwhile work, and making a difference in your job. The simple act of a handwritten thank you note is powerful, and we don't do it very often anymore. I'm sorry for the principal team because I think you've heard this example, but it really was so impactful for me. I share it as my example almost every time. We had a woman that was the director of our charitable giving in our organization. She was 80-something years old at the time. She passed away a couple of years ago. And it was a huge loss for me. I was very personally close to her. I just admired her so much. And she made a great difference in our organization. When she passed away, one of the employees in my organization sent me a note. And she said, Debbie, I know that you took Gwen's loss hard, and I'm sorry for your loss. She said, I want to thank you. She said, I know how much she meant to you, and that she was a role model. I want to thank you for being that role model. When I think about the person I want to be, the way I want to live my life, I look at you. And I don't think you realize what a difference you made in my life. And I just want to thank you. Now, I go around the country talking several months. I thought it couldn't get any better than that until my daughter came home. She saw it sitting on the bathroom counter. She said to me, "Mom, what is that?" I said, "Autumn sent that to me. It's a great note. I can't tell you what it meant to me." My daughter read it. How do you think my daughter felt about me with that month? What a difference she made in this person's life. She didn't know her. She knows the circumstances. We hear example after example, story after story, when we coach the value of a simple thank you note and how it begins to turn organizations around. And not just from you, get them to come from other leaders in your organization. Hardwired in your organization that you're going to get the clerk to write a personal thank you note to certain employees that are really making a difference in your organization. You start that in your organization. When people really do things that are significant. And by the way, significant may be that they simply ordered the pizzas for the party when you want to find out who your low performers are. They can be simple things, they can be big things, but they can be very impactful. What do you think I think about that employee that wrote me that thank you note? I didn't interact with her much, and I don't much on a day-to-day basis. She reports to one of my direct reports. But I am so committed to her success. When she comes in and wants to talk to me about how to grow her skills, or I'm thinking about applying for another job, or whatever it is that she wants to do, I want to do everything I can to help her be successful. That's the value of that. So share your successes relentlessly. Find a way to reward and recognize the people who are making a difference. That creates purpose and worthwhile work. And just find the time to say thank you. All of those things, when you get back to the office next week, you can start doing immediately without any difficulty at all.